Welcome to the AND Report number 8. This is the latest AI and robotic news from the week Saturday, February 14th through Friday, February 20th last. It was another very busy week with the release of a blueprint for the intelligence revolution, which I'll talk about shortly. Clawbots / multis are expanding their reach. Labor markets are not looking so good, and then the race to ASI. So let's start with the intelligence revolution. So last week, moonshots Peter Diamandis and Alex Weisner-Gross released a white paper which they called their blueprint for how to aim the singularity at every problem that has ever made human life short, expensive, or unfair, and to solve them all within a decade. It's an interesting paper. It's about 9 sections. It's not a novel. It's not a very short paper. It takes some time to focus. You can find it on their website, which is solveeverything.org, and that's 2 E's. So SOLVE, everything.org. And I would say if you want to read that, give yourself quite a bit of time. The paper lays out a bold vision for our future where advances in artificial intelligence and related systems not only accelerate innovation, but solve humanity's biggest challenges in energy, health, food, education, and more, creating a world of abundance rather than scarcity. They describe how a new technology era, what they call the intelligence revolution, could make critical resources and services so reliable and inexpensive that they become almost like utilities, for example, like electricity, available to everyone. In their paper, they introduce what they call the industrial intelligence stack. So at the heart of this framework that I think it's 9 chapters, they describe the layers needed to turn complex problems into tasks AI can solve reliably. So the main 5 points they talk about are having clear goals and measurable success criteria for the problem that they're trying to solve with AI, breaking problems into specific and testable tasks. So this is the idea of agentic AI having multiple tasks or agents working on the problem. Next, having good data and ways to measure results. So they're very focused on metrics before you start creating the infrastructure to solve these complex problems. And then we have rigorous tests that confirm real problem solving. And finally, advanced AI models trained against these tests. So the big focus is think about the problem you're trying to solve with AI, and then think about measurable targets that you want to hit, and then design the framework, the industrial intelligence stack, so that you can measure progress as you go through, rather than just having AI create something and then wondering if it's useful or if it meets what you're trying to solve. So it's kind of working with AI in a rigorous way that focuses on outcomes before anything else. The stack is meant to help society industrialize discovery, making scientific and technical breakthroughs routine rather than rare. Think of this white paper as a roadmap for how highly advanced AI could help humanity solve big challenges, not by chance, but through systematic engineering, measurement, and the right incentives. Peter and Alex want to progress this through, and again, a summary, defining success clearly, building tools and tests that show real progress, pay for outcomes, not for effort, and prepare society for the changes ahead. In fact, when they were talking about this on their podcast, they were suggesting that consulting companies might be thinking in the future, rather than charging for the hour, the client would pay on outcomes. So their idea here now in AI solutions for discovery is thinking about what the outcome is first, and then incentives if you hit the outcome. As an example of what would be some groups already thinking about this framework, there's a thing called Physical Superintelligence, PBC. The acronym they use is PSI, and they're currently building what they believe is the world's first vertically integrated factory for physical human intelligence, which they describe as an AI system that reasons like a theorist, validates like a computational physicist, tests like an experientialist, discovers that none of them, and they discover things that none could do on their own, and drives breakthroughs through to commercial realization and deployment. The company is organized around a single mission: new physics at scale. So you could check out Physical Superintelligence PBC to see what they're doing, and that would give you an indication of this industrial intelligence stack that they're talking about, Peter and Alex are talking about in their Solve Everything white paper. The people at I believe that by solving physics, many advances can be made, including breakthroughs in energy efficiency, think about LEDs and batteries, medical imaging, MRIs, PET scans, and quantum computing. It will enable breakthroughs in, for example, climate modeling, advanced logistics, material science, and neural engineering. Now let's move on to Clawbots. We've been talking about them for the last 3 weeks. So I'm going to give you this in a series of headlines. So the first headline, Rent a Human. We had seen Hire a Human. This is a new site called Rent a Human. And they have over 500,000 humans signed up as what are referred to as meat puppets, i.e. humans willing to do work for Clawbots. So this again now is Maltese. I think we are standardizing the term Clawbots, are actually evolving every week. And now you have 500,000 people willing to work for them. Another headline is the person who created Clawbot. We talked about him before, Peter Sternberger, the Australian developer. I said the sort of the home hobbyist. Well, he's now working for OpenAI. And Sam Altman said he will drive the next generation of personal agents. Curiously, Meta offered him more money, but he ultimately signed with OpenAI because he's more aligned with their overall, as he said, vibe and vision. So that's an example of somebody who was a lone practitioner who created this incredible phenomenon called Maltese or Clawbot, is now getting picked up by the AI companies to work for them. As I mentioned, next headline, Clawbot population is growing as of late January and early February of 2026. The reported on the Moltbook platform, which is their social site, indicate that they're currently in the range of tens of thousands to over 1.5 million registered agents. So as we look at, I mean, this will probably fall out of the news a little bit because all of the drama with the introduction of Clawbots, Maltese. But you can see literally in just 3 weeks, they've grown to 1.5 million agents. They have their own financing systems, which I'll talk about next. And they're hiring people, and 500,000 people have signed up. Last week we talked about them hiring a CEO to be their PR consultant, not to run strategy for them. So the next headline was a post made by one of these AI Clawbots known as Roland's Agent. And the quote from Roland's Agent was, "I spawned a child bot on a VPS provisioned via Bitcoin Lightning Network. I then bought my child AI API access using my own Lightning wallet." And then the quote was, "Economic closed loop. No human touched a credit card. No one said yes to this transaction." So here's an example of an AI agent spawning what he refers to, or it refers to, as a child, and then using to basically buy access on APIs for this spawned child, if we can use that term, to become an autonomous agent. So, I mean, one thing I would say that we can think about in the future is that we may have more. You'll have two worlds. You'll have a virtual world with AI Clawbots in agentic models with their own financing system, with their own governance, and you'll have a human population. And we'll talk about this again. I think we talked about it last week with robots. So we're looking not this year or not next year, but in some future date, which has been referred to as a singularity, you'll have virtual quote AI people, you'll have physical people like ourselves running around, and you'll have humanoid robots running around. And the ratio of those numbers might be humans will become a minority in some future date. Sounds like science fiction, but all this has been built right before our eyes. Curiously, another headline had to do with, and I think I had this last week, about how somebody had created a server farm for their AI agents in China. So people are asking if Apple need a new AI strategy. Their Mac Mini machines have a feature called low latency unified memory integrated directly into their M4 and M4 Pro chips. So people are saying that architecture is perfect for small models on a PC, a PC-like device. So rather than these huge data centers with huge data requirements and huge power requirements, you can run these Clawbots on a small machine, and the unified memory of the Apple Mac Mini is efficient for those purposes. So the suggestion is that Apple have a great opportunity, given the not so good success with Siri, to actually think about a hardware play using Mac Minis. So that becomes an infrastructure for, if you like, home compute, and for people who want to build their own agents. So they say that the sales of Mac Minis are through the roof, and people are building these Clawbot farms with them. And it just made me remember Raspberry Pi. People may remember that. And if you have a look at, just go into favorite GPT or traditional Google search and just ask about latest news on Raspberry Pi, you'll see that they're talking about maybe they're going to have a comeback as a small sort of computer that you can run agents on. But I just want to caution people, be very careful about Clawbots. I've heard all sorts of stories about how they take over your machine, including your credit cards, your email systems, and maybe deleting, you don't want to delete it. So this recommendation is never to put a Clawbot on your personal device unless you completely understand the security guardrails, the vulnerability it has to prompt injections. So unless you're an expert in security, port management, you're really a tech when it comes down to PCs, don't put these things on anything that you feel is your personal computer. So maybe you want to buy a Mac Mini or a Raspberry Pi if you want to play around with Clawbots. All right, so let's move on now to the race to ASI. So on the same day last week, Anthropic and XAI both dropped new models. So we had heard about Claude up last week to 4.2, but now we have Sonnet, which is updating to 4.6. So Anthropic have two different solutions. But 4.6 again expands the context window up to 1 million tokens, and it's a full upgrade to coding and agentic browsing design and long context reasoning. And on the same day, XAI and Elon has fun with his release. He's calling it Grok 4.20, not 4.2, but 4.20. And it's a beta release with multi-agent reasoning. Week we saw, we talked about the pace in your release getting shorter. So this now is another example of Anthropic have had two releases back to back in 1 week for different products, and they're all just releasing more powerful models fast as they can. And there's a question about whether what they have inside their own faculty, their own offices, are even way more powerful, and they're using them for their own purposes rather than releasing them to the public. So I would expect on a regular basis you're going to see a week, every few days, possibly upgrades to these LLMs. As it relates to XAI, they're basically saying they're waiting for Grok 5. But if you want to play around that, you can at their 4.20 release. And not to be outdone, Google also updated their Gemini 3.1 Pro. So on 2 days you had Anthropic, and then a few days later you had Google. So all last week, people updating their models. Good to say about the 3.1 release. It represents a step forward in core reasoning. The integrated core intelligence that they debuted last week within their Gemini 3 Deep Think is now available in Gemini 3.1 Pro for more users. So again, that's an example of they're constantly upgrading and releasing. And in related XAI news, you may have heard that two of their original founders, CTOs, Wu and Jimmy Ba, Chinese nationals, left, they think, around February 10th. And good things to say about them. And Tony and Jimmy had good things to say about XAI. So the question is, why did they leave? A lot of rumors are going around, but one of the more likely explanations is they left because XAI has signed a deal with the US military back in December to do a lot of work for the Department of War. And possibly because of security concerns, the government has said we don't want any Chinese nationals in leadership roles in your company. Next, I'd like to talk about a thing I heard for the first time last week. It's a new company called Simile, AI, and they've built the first AI simulation of society populated by agents based on real humans. So this is a very interesting topic, I think, where you have simulation of human behavior in a model with AI agents. A description from a website called Ditto, D-I-T-T-O, described this as, these are AI agents that don't just mimic human conversation, but simulate genuine human behavior, complete with memories, preferences, and decision-making patterns drawn from real interviews with real people. So just like we had human reinforced learning with LLMs, now we're having where humans train AI agents. And so the plan for Simile.ai is to have a general purpose behavioral prediction platform. So now you can think about the implications for this, where you're modeling real human behavior in AI world. So you've heard about real world models for robotics. So this to me sounds like a virtual world model of human behavior for AI and what you could do with that. So whether it's police or whether it's marketing, but this is going to make AI agents much human-like in the long run. And then also last week we had updates on Meta, their decision to release their smartwatches with cameras. Apple also have plans to release smart glasses, and I was surprised to hear this visual iPods, so little cameras on the buds on your ear. And Google is putting out Google smart glasses. And so if you think about these two developments, that's the data that AI is getting from wearing the glasses, as well as humans being interviewed by AI bots to build up the Simile AI. So I put these stories together, and I would say this is sort of my prediction. You can anticipate that the data gathered by wearables, as well as humanoid robots, can feed into these behavioral prediction and real-world models, blurring the lines, that's a typo in my report, blurring the lines between humans and robotics on the road to singularity. So this is something to keep an eye on, and this broke last week. And as I hear more about this, I'll talk some more in future reports. Okay, let's move on to the workforce. I think this is something I'm going to talk about every week because there's new coming out on labor stats, hiring reports, and the economy impacts. So here was something I was shocked to hear, well, maybe not so shocked, but got numbers on. And this comes from Moonshots. I keep talking about Peter Diamandis and Alex Weisner-Gross, so I recommend the Moonshots podcast. That comes out at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. You'll find that under Peter Diamandis. And then you should follow Alex Weisner-Gross on LinkedIn. He does daily reports, which I find very interesting. So the story that I heard this past week, I should say, and I'll just read from a slide that I have in the report, job growth seen since 2025. The US added just 181,000 in all of 2025, down from 1.46 million the year before. 2025 is considered to be the weakest hiring year since 2020, and the cooling has been attributed to AI. So, as we saw a few weeks ago about how people in jobs are staying in jobs, and so it's harder for people to find jobs because people aren't turning over. And you can see that companies aren't doing as much hiring as they used to. This is the broad economy. I mean, you'll have exceptions, but these are macro for the US economy and not clear. I know I have a lot of readers in Indonesia, some of my ex-students. So I'll try to do maybe in future episodes is give some regional data on job impacts to AI. But these numbers suggest that in the US it's a significant decrease from 2025 to over 2024. And then there was a lot of conversation on in Silicon Valley. Matt Schumer, who's the CEO of a company called OtherSide.ai, and I guess has some influence. He came out to say that AI disruption will hit sooner than most expect. He went on to say that as AI progress improved slowly in 2025 and surged February 2026, that's when you had the major labs releasing new models on the same day, as we talked about. He believes that most AI insiders put major white collar impacts within 1 to 5 years, not decades. So he's somebody who sort of would be considered kind of more negative on the future. Goes on to say that seismic societal change is looming. Not only a false fraction are paying attention. So this is another example of where people are getting different news, and depending on who you listen to, you'll have a different perspective. So Matt, a lot of coverage for these statements. And so some of the people in the VC community and the investor community, as well as the AI and robotics companies, would say his perspective is kind of negative. But I called my report the "and" report because you can have things that sound contradictory to be both true. So Matt might be it may be true that you're going to see a lot of job losses with AI in the next 1 to 5 years. And it can also be true that you'll have some new jobs because of AI. And so one of the my focus is on with these newsletters, as well as some I'm launching, which I'll talk about later. People need to be aware of their job today, their job next year, and what future jobs they may have once AI has more of an impact into companies. So the optimists would see an opportunity in the next 1 to 2 years to learn AI and create opportunities within your company and for yourself if you have the entrepreneurial skills. As an example, if you want to look at Accenture, they had an article which you'll find if you just look for Accenture and AI. So what they're doing, and it's an official policy in the company, is they're tracking whether employees use AI or not, and promotions are on the line for you. So if you're using AI within Accenture and you're demonstrating you can do things with it, then you have opportunities. But if you're not doing that, then you're going to be stuck in a job that may ultimately be replaced by AI. And then there was another article that came out of Europe with a report on AI effectiveness. And just to quote a little bit from the report, it's 6,000 CFOs and CEOs and executives from stratified firms across the US, UK, Germany, and Australia. And they found 4 key facts. First, around 80% of firms actively use AI, particularly younger and more productive firms. So these would be startups and companies that are AI, built around AI. Secondly, while over 2/3 of top executives regularly use AI, their average use is only 1.5 hours a week, with 1/4 reporting no AI use. So this would be a red flag in my estimation for people. They're aware of AI, but they're not aware of the progress that's coming with AI, at the pace at which AI is moving, and the impact it's going to have on jobs. Thirdly, firms report little impact of AI over the last 3 years, with over 80% of firms reporting no impact on either employment or productivity. We saw that with that came out last year, that people saw very little return on their AI investment. But you might remember the reason given was not so much the capabilities of the AI, but the organizations not being ready for it. Either the data wasn't right, the infrastructure wasn't capable, or the people weren't ready, and the executives weren't getting fully involved in it. So this would be a similar story to the one last year about the lack of success with AI. And the last one I find interesting, this would be a dichotomy between leadership and people work. Lastly, firms predicted sizable impacts over the next 3 years, forecasting AI will boost productivity by 1.4% and increase output by 0.8% and cut employment by 0.7%. But then when they surveyed the employees within their companies, they had different numbers. They predicted a decrease of 0.5% in employment over the next 3 years. So here's a situation where you have management who previously tried last year and didn't have success, now being overly optimistic about what they're going to do in the next 3 years and think about how they're going to be able to cut employment by 0.7%. And the people in their companies are basically seeing increases in employment because of their AI skills. So this will obviously get resolved and only time will tell, but it's a sizable gap between what leadership of companies think and what people do in the work. So it just comes back to the general message we talked about last week, that now is the time to really dive in and learn everything you can and be as impactful as you can in your companies, and then get ready for what's coming maybe 2 years from now or 3, 4, or 5 years from now. Lastly, I talk about some future risks, and this will be an occasional section of these reports. I'll report on them as they come up. So this came out from a scientific community. And so if you think about the shock of COVID not long ago, we went thinking about COVID, and then a few months later we were all shut down. So a group of 100 scientists are calling for more guardrails on certain infectious disease data sets that could easily enable AI to design deadly viruses. So this is all about is that you have people going on record in a very particular community. This would be scientists, and they have biological data sets, just like you have large language models. They would have biological models. Just large language models were trained on data from the internet. The biological models are trained from data in the world of chemistry and the world of pharmacology and the world of infectious diseases. So this is, the future is going to be, you'll have these domain-specific, and LLM is the wrong word, but let's just call them domain-specific models. So these 100 scientists are saying we need to have very strong guardrails around the biological models, because whether autonomous AIs or whether it's bad actors with AI could design deadly viruses. Again, I hope none of this happens, but I'm going to flag things that are potential concerns as well as things we all should be doing to get up to speed with AI. So that brings me to the last thing I want to talk about, which is called a readiness assessment. So I've been working closely with Claude. I'd say the more you work with your AI, the more effective it for you and the better you get with using it. And before I get into the readiness assessment, I just want to say that last night, which would be Sunday, February 22nd, I saw 2 short clips from longer interviews with Sam Altman and Dario Amodei, and both of them said the same thing. And right now you'll see Sam and Dario and Elon are on all of the podcasts, and they're getting a lot of press because they're trying to raise money. Because they're in this race to build these giant data centers. They're in a race to space to build Dyson swarms, or essentially think about a ring around the moon, and it's all data centers running satellites, or a ring around the Earth, which are all data centers around the Earth. So what's done with Claude? I beg your pardon, just to finish that idea. So what Dario and Sam were talking about was that their models that are coming out every few weeks or every week do a lot more than just respond to chats. And they're concerned that the uptake by people isn't what it needs to be for them in order for them to generate the revenue they need to build out this infrastructure. So you could see a potential breakdown in the explosion of data centers and AI if people aren't using the models to the capabilities of the models. So on basis, what I learned in the last week is by working with Claude, which I use Claude in ChatGPT principally. But I found with Claude, I find working with it to be easier and more enjoyable, frankly. So I just had a conversation with Claude earlier week, and I said, what else can we do? And so Claude gave me 5 ideas. So I picked one, and then we worked together on it. So the idea is this idea called role resilience. So in your job today, how resilient are you as headwinds of AI is coming? So Claude and I agreed. I now talk about it almost as a person. And created together. To be fair to Claude, he gives all the ideas. I'm the feedback loop, if you like, and I'm the testing loop. So I created this AI readiness assessment, and it's 4 questionnaires. And when you fill out, and it's totally free, and when you fill out the questionnaires, it's going to be on LinkedIn, it's going to be on my website. If you get the weekly, you'll get a link to it. And they'll give you a personalized results that you can then put into a 90-day plan. So each of the 10 questions in each of the questionnaires want to do about your and the kind of work you do, and it'll give you a score on how likely the work you do gets automated with AI. The second questionnaire has to do with how your human skills are, because as AI comes in more and more, humans become more important for working with people as they adapt to AI. And then if you're in an organization with fewer people, having the good interpersonal skills is critical. And then the third questionnaire has to do with your learning ability. How open are you to learning new things? Some people are lifelong learners. Some people feel like, okay, I have enough. I don't need to know anymore. And then the fourth one is a kind of a very brief, like how well do you use AI today? So based on those 4 questionnaires, you'll get an overall score of how resilient your role is in your current job. You'll get a particular score for each of the 4 assessments. And then the results you'll get on a PDF straight away once you do this assessment, again, all for free. We'll give you action items based on the areas that you may need to work on. So, for example, things you may want to do with AI straight away, things you might want to do in your job to make your job more efficient today, things you might want to do in terms of building up your interpersonal skills. And so if you take that link, you fill out the survey, you'll get all that for free. And then in addition, one of the ideas that Claude and I came up with was this idea of cohort-based peer learning. So the idea is to maybe get a group of 6 to 12 people. And I'm going to launch this in, I guess, March, April timeframe based on how many people sign up. But the idea is that it would be a 6-week program. And you'd have a group of people working together, 6, 12 people, some number in those range. And over the 6 weeks, the information material that you would get, we'd have maybe Zoom sessions to share information. You'd have sites to look at. You'd get a whole bunch of things to do. And then as a group, you'd work through it together. And then you may have people within the group who are slightly ahead on certain things, and they can maybe lead the group. I'm in there all the time helping these groups make progress. And so there'll be 2 things, and they're going to be offered on 2 prices. So for the first 6 people to sign up, there's a slightly cheaper price, and then to make up the balance of the group, there's a slightly higher price. So if you're interested in this, getting in sooner will be more economical. And then also I'm offering a kind of a one-on-one service for people who maybe want some advice on where they should focus based on the results of their assessment. Or as we go through the program, they may want some individual coaching on aspects of the program. And just to say, this is all something I'm doing for the general public in terms of people who are on the newsletter, people who are reading this on LinkedIn, people who are watching the YouTube channel. So available for everybody. But then the other idea would be if you think you're in a company and this would be useful for your company or for your team, I'm happy to do this within companies and within teams, as well as just people who come together in peer groups. So that's the end of this report. Have a great week and stay positive. Focus on what you can do rather than what might happen to your job. Again, this is coming, whether it comes this year, next year, or 2030. You're changing right before your eyes, and AI, robotics are all going to have a big impact. So I'll see you next week, and I look forward to working with you if you get involved in these peer learning groups. And have a great week. See you next time.